All right, it's been 4 days, and we did check that math, since Title 42 was lifted by the Biden administration, and while the border was widely expected to see chaos in the wake of the policy expiration, the number of migrant crossings that we know about, is the asterisk, is dropping. The influx is being felt across the country, including New York City, where thousands of people have been sent. Mayor Eric Adams called out the president in his response to the migrant crisis, saying, quote, "I think we all should be asking why this is happening to a city that was turning itself around and will continue to do so. This should not be happening to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and the other big northern cities. And it really should not be happening to El Paso or Brownsville. No city should be carrying this burden. This is a national problem. It needs a national solution." Johanna, it seems as though there's starting to be a real split in the Democratic Party over the difference between what everybody wants to have as an immigration policy and the results of that immigration policy.
Well, look, I think that the Democrats are all in lockstep that they want comprehensive immigration reform. How they're going to get there.
Okay, fine.
But the truth is, well, we're seeing less detentions. Maybe we're seeing, but we're going to see more backlog of the court cases. So we're going to have all these asylum seekers. The more and the more we get, the more backlog we have. Until you change that with comprehensive immigration reform, Eric Adams is right, and he is calling out what I think a lot of people are calling out. And I did say last week, I have been surprised to see Gavin Newsom very muted on this because he was very loud in December of last year. But you are seeing the ramifications of not having immigration reform at our borders. And the truth is, we actually need people here to work to help our Social Security coffers.
Right, fair enough. But Julie, when I see this, I think there's also, there's two parts to this, right? There's the number of people who were, quote unquote, bussed by Greg Abbott to New York. Most of them wanted to go to New York. And then there's the thousands of people that I was with and I interviewed who, when asked where they wanted to go, they said they wanted to go to New York. They're at the McAllen, Texas airport and had been given plane tickets there. Is there any sort of understanding by Republicans of how to exploit this rift with the Democrats?
Yeah, look, I think I'm curious to see what the Republicans running in the primary do, what we see Republican leadership do. I think there's definitely an opportunity because I do think there's a rift, particularly with your conservative Democrats like Eric Adams and obviously the more progressive members. But, I think it's interesting with Ron DeSantis, he recently passed an immigration bill in Florida allocating, $12 million to relocate some migrants that come to Florida. You're starting to see him talk more about immigration. So I think there's an opportunity for them to expose that.
Well, I would just say, the administration wants to focus on the fact that the number of illegal crossings is going down. And they don't want to talk about the fact that they're still releasing migrants who have already illegally crossed the border. And they're releasing them back into the interior of the country, some of them with court dates that are several years into the future. And that's going to impact voters, of course, who are looking around saying, where are all these people going to go? And there's a lot of frustration there.
The ground truth, right, is that there's a big difference necessarily between the numbers that we see as released by the administration and what that really means. You point out there's a lot of people being released into the United States. There's also, because there was a surge, quote unquote, of border enforcement, there's a lot of Border Patrol agents who are taking a couple of days off or now have time off, or there's not as many resources at the border. Therefore, there's a lot more gotaways that then come into the United States and move on without ever being processed. So there's a lot of ways to cut the numbers. I wonder, though, Johanna, what is the plan for Democrats who are seeing now real splits within the Democratic caucus on Capitol Hill and by big city mayors, and even in Chicago, a Democratic precinct that voted 97% for Joe Biden when the plan from the city was to house illegal immigrants who had come up to Chicago in their district, in their precinct, said, no thanks.
They need a plan. That's the truth. And the administration has to focus on reform and a plan. And even people within his administration who have been very close to this say they need a plan. But the truth is, we talk about them as migrants. These are human beings. We're also shipping a lot of those human beings back to their country that they are saying is a place that they can no longer be at. And I do worry about this. If we don't look at it as a comprehensive situation with India's democracy is in peril, so you have a lot more Indians coming here through the southern border. Venezuelan migrants are increasing because their socialism has taken over their country. Colombia, you've seen this. That is a problem for us because we haven't taken care of the problem where it is. And as long as we ignore these problems globally, they will come up on our shore. So I think it calls into doubt the, populist, we're just going to take care of ourselves, because it's going to come here.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.